No explosions, no triumphant music, no recap of glory. Just a man already in free fall. The record shows Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne, arriving in 2003, 2 years after the original burned its way into the culture. First game arrived loud, violent, stylish. It announced itself with grit and bravado, with graphic novels and gunfights that felt revolutionary at the time. The second one didn't announce anything. It kind of went to Remedy Entertainment returned under the same partnership with Rockstar Games, but the expectations had shifted. Bullet time was no longer a novelty. Noir narration had become familiar. The genre had moved on. Or at least it pretended to. What the record doesn't mention is that Remedy didn't try to compete with that noise. They pulled inward. Max Payne 2 is often remembered as short, as smaller, and as lesser. But the files suggest something else entirely. This wasn't a sequel designed to escalate. It was designed to collapse. Evidence suggests that Sam Lake's writing shifted deliberately. The revenge narrative of the first game had reached its natural conclusion. The wife and children were gone, the enemy had been punished. So instead of asking how Max survives, why does he keep going? The tone changes immediately. The internal monologue is still there, but it's restrained. Less comic book bravado, more resignation. The metaphors aren't grand. They're tired, familiar, like lines rehearsed too many times to still feel clever. Max isn't narrating because he wants to be heard. He's narrating because silence would be worse. This is where the misclassification begins. Max Payne 2 is not a power fantasy. The mechanics may suggest one slow motion, precision shooting, enemies flung through the air like broken mannequins. But the story doesn't agree. The file shows a romance at the center of the design. Not a healthy one. Not a redemptive one. Redemptive? A word? A noir romance. The kind that only exists because it's already doomed. Mona Sax enters not as a reward or companion, but as a mirror. Another survivor, another criminal. Another person who understands that survival doesn't mean escape. The game doesn't ask if Max will win. It asks if he'll feel anything when it's over. From the opening moments, Max Payne 2 establishes itself as something quieter, sadder, and more intimate than its predecessor. The gunshots echo differently. The rooms feel emptier. The city feels like it's already moved on. This wasn't an accident. The fall had already begun. The hardware matters. Back in the day especially. Because when it comes down to the hardware, the record shows Max Payne 2 releasing across PC, PlayStation 2, and the original Xbox. On paper, these versions are identical. Same story, same levels, same dialogue, same pain. But evidence suggests that the Xbox version carried the intent more cleanly than the others. This was an early Xbox era release, a console still defining itself, heavier, louder, built like industrial equipment, marked as raw power rather than elegance. And for Max Payne 2, that mattered. The Xbox hardware offered stability, not perfection, but consistency. Frame rate drops still occurred, but less frequently than on the PlayStation 2 version. The combat rhythm, so dependent on timing and spatial awareness, benefited from that steadiness. Bullet time doesn't forgive stutter. Doesn't forgive Controller feel also plays a role in the evidence. The Duke controller, later replaced, but still emblematic, was heavy, deliberate. The analog sticks weren't delicate instruments. They were required intention. That weight translated well to Max's movement. Shoot dodging demanded commitment. You didn't flick into it accidentally. Bullet time activation felt like a decision, not a reflex. The triggers carried resistance too. Each shot felt measured. This supported the game's cinematic intent. Max Payne 2 doesn't want panic. It wants choreography. The Xbox version allowed the player to stage violence instead of react to it. To plain arcs of movement, to align shots with falling bodies, to treat combat like a blocking in a scene rather than chaos in a room. Compared to PlayStation 2, where resolution and performance limitations sometimes flattened that experience, the Xbox maintained clarity. Not superiority, clarity. And clarity is crucial, though, when the game is asking the player to slow down, not speed up. The file notes that this version helped cement Max Payne's 2 identity as a cinematic artifact. Not just a shooter that looks like a movie, but one that behaves like one. Every technical choice reinforced the tone, the hardware didn't overpower the story, and it stayed out of the way. Bullet time returned, but it wasn't the same. The file documents clear mechanical revisions. Bullet Time 2.0 expanded the system and introduced in the original game. The meter recharged faster, kills replenished it, shot dodges became more fluid, more forgiving. On paper, this sounds like empowerment. In practice, it feels like obsession. Max doesn't use bullet time because it's cool. He uses it because it's the only moment where the world makes sense. Evidence suggests that the bullet time functions as character expression. When Max slows the world down, he isn't bending reality. He's retreating into control. His isolating moments where consequences can be delayed. Time slows, pain waits, choices feel manageable. The improved mechanics encourage players to remain in this state. Chain kills extend the meter, and you stay slowed, stay detached. It's not accidental. That the game rewards precision over aggression. Clean shots, head level accuracy, movement through space with intention. That's when violence becomes choreography. The Havoc physics system reinforces this idea. Bodies don't just fall, they react. They tumble, they collide with the environment in unpredictable but believable ways. Ragdolls aren't there for comedy. They're there to show weight. Enemies don't vanish when they're defeated. They remain. Twisted, bent at wrong angles, a hand coming out of a booty, piled in corners where firefights occurred minutes earlier. The aftermath lingers. The file notes that shooting, dodging, Max's signature move, the shoot dodge, has been refined to feel more like a deliberate stunt than a panic response. You choose direction, you commit, you watch the consequences unfold in slow motion. This isn't chaos. It's control masquerading as chaos. Max's emotional state mirrors this system. Outside of bullet time, the world is hostile and fast. Inside of it, everything aligns. He can process it, he can act, but it doesn't last. Eventually, the meter empties. Time resumes, the illusion breaks. The game doesn't let you live there forever, unfortunately. And neither does Max. Combat in Max Payne 2 doesn't escalate in difficulty so much as it tightens. Enemy placement becomes more deliberate. Spaces become more enclosed. Opportunities for theatrical movements narrow. The jumps around corners and the slowdown, and the jumps from up high and the slowdown, it all goes away pretty much. The player adapts. So does Max. By the end, bullet times feels less like a superpower and more like a habit. Something relied on too heavily. Something that works, but costs something each time. The file suggests that this is the point. Violence isn't celebrated here. It's ritualized. The record shows a shift. Sam Lake's writing in Max Payne 2 abandons the operatic revenge tone of the first game. In its place is something more vulnerable, more dangerous. It's a love story, but not one advertised as such. Mona Sax returns not as a femme fatale obstacle, but as a co-protagonist. She's playable. She has her own perspective, her own damage. This matters. The game doesn't frame her as a prize. It frames her as a parallel person. Another person shaped by violence. Another person who understands the redemption is a fantasy. Max and Mona don't fall in love because it's hopeful. They fall in love because it's familiar. Evidence suggests their connection is rooted in recognition, not desire. They see themselves in each other. Survivors who have crossed lines they can't uncross. The Noir archetype is clear. Two damaged people, briefly aligned, aware that the ending won't be kind. The reoccurring song, Late Goodbye, by Poets of the Fall, reinforces this theme with brutal efficiency. It plays dialectically and non-dialectically. It becomes a motif. Yeah, I just used motif. A memory, a premonition. The lyrics don't promise happiness. They acknowledge inevitability. This isn't a romance that interprets the violence. It's one that exists because of it. Compared to Max Payne 1's straightforward revenge arc, the sequel feels intimate. Conversations are quieter, moments linger, silence is allowed to breathe. The file notes that some players found this disappointing. Expected escalation, expected spectacle. What they received was reflection. Mona's playable sections are brief, but very significant. The perspective shift matters less mechanically than thematically. The game asked the player to inhabit someone else's fall, to understand that Max isn't unique. He's just really loud. The love story is hidden because it's fragile, because naming it would make it too honest. Noir doesn't even survive honesty. It survives implication. And the game understands this. Critics praised Max Payne 2. Reviews highlighted its writing, its atmosphere, its refinement. But the sales, they just didn't follow, like they just never seemed to back in that day. For really good games. Some really good games. Commercially, it underperformed. The record shows numbers that never matched its ambition. It was too short, they said. Too subdued. Too sad. Evidence suggests those criticisms, they missed the point. The game's length isn't a flaw. It's density. Every scene carries weight. Every mechanic reinforces theme. There's no filter, no padding, no distractions. This isn't a game you live in. It's a game you pass through. Its legacy isn't mechanical innovation. Though it influenced many cinematic shooters that followed, its legacy is emotional precision. People remember how it felt. They remember the tone, the music, the quiet conversations, the sense that ending wasn't a victory, but it was a pause. That's why it still hurts. Briefly, the record acknowledges the future, a remake is coming, technology will update, assets will be rebuilt, systems refined, but this file remains tied to its time. The original Xbox version stands as evidence of a moment when hardware, writing, and intent aligned just enough to capture something fragile. Not triumph, but resignation. The case was never meant to be solved, only understood. Let me know what you guys want to see archived next down in the comments down below. And then don't forget as well to like and subscribe the video. Don't forget to help